Say hi, everyone. Callie.
Woohoo! What I wanted to do is just introduce Teri Bolton, the Assistant Director at RIMS, and then unshare my screen so that you can actually see her. There we go. So Teri,
Hi.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for asking for me to join you.
So do you want to say a few things? And let me put my video on so it looks like you're not chatting with nobody there.
Okay.
So would you like to say a few things about where you are right now?
Sure.
And then we'll chat.
Okay. Well, we're sitting on Bailey's Key. I'm on one of the floating platforms, our training platforms. I'm just going to turn the camera away from me for a minute and show you the facility. There's Bailey right there and her calf tank. And we're panning all around the facility. There's guys training in the background. So this is our main lagoon where all 17 of our dolphins live. And here comes Dory with a blade of seagrass because she wants to play, but I can't talk right now, Dor. Okay, so just to give you guys an idea of what our facility looks like, and my name is Teri Bolton, and I've been working here for 29 years with the same group of dolphins, which I feel very fortunate to have been blessed with that opportunity. I'm a biologist, but I've been training dolphins since I was 22, 23 years old. I'm not going to tell you how old I am now because that's just not nice. So, Roatan, I'm going to answer some of your questions that you wrote down for me here. And then Kathleen, if you want me to expand on anything or, just stop me and we'll go from there, okay?
Okay,
so
that sounds good.
People are asking, where is Roatan, which is a very commonly asked question. It's very funny because not a lot of people know where it is, and it's not really that far from the United States of America. Roatan is one of the 8 Bay Islands. It's a chain of islands off the northern coast of Honduras, which is located in Central America. Our borders are Nicaragua, El Salvador, and Guatemala. So we're right there in the center of Central America, and we're a little bitty island, 35 miles long, about 4 or 5 miles at its widest point. And that is, like I said, off the northern coast of Honduras. How long has the Roatan Institute for Marine Sciences been at Anthony's Key Resort? Okay, well, Anthony's Key Resort started off strictly as a dive resort for really die-hard divers. It was very difficult to get back here or down to here. It's only nowadays about a 2-hour and 15-minute flight from Miami or Houston, but back then it probably was still just as long as a flight, but there was only one flight a day here on Roatan instead of what we have now, 15 a week or so. So it was really for people that wanted to dive here in the Bay Islands very badly. And I believe that the resort was started in the late 60s, early 70s. Just started off a few cabins. In the late 80s, swimming with the dolphin programs became real popular. And so the oceanarium that I was working at came down to Roatan to see if they could start a swim with the dolphins program here. And my husband, I wasn't married to at the time, but we were working together at the oceanarium. He came down to meet with the government officials and the owners of the resort and the president of the country, actually, to explain what the program was going to be like and get permission to have it here in Roatan. So we got the permission to do it, and we got the permission to collect the first 15 animals from the wild, and they were brought in 1989 and 90. My husband and I moved down here in 91 and have been running the program ever since. So cool. That's how the program got started. The owners of Anthony's Key and the government of Honduras thought that it would be a really neat program to have in the Bay Islands, and it's very, very popular. What kind of dolphins do we have? We have coastal bottlenose dolphins. And you should know that coastal bottlenose dolphins are found in every ocean in the sea, and that they are not endangered by any stretch of the imagination, but they are protected by international law. So if you want to look at how bottlenose dolphins are protected, you can look that up under international law. It's called CITES. How many dolphins do we have? Oh, hi, Polly. Polly's talking to me because I'm not paying attention. There you are. Say hi.
Hi, Polly.
Can't ignore them. When they talk to me, I can't ignore them. I have to acknowledge that they're calling out to me. So anyway, we have 17 dolphins here. 3 were collected from, hold on a second. Can you do it again? Can you do it again? You're not going to do it now? She just spit water at me and waved at me at the same time. And she's calling me. Okay, so we have 17 dolphins here at the Institute for Marine Sciences. We have 7 males and 10 females. 3 were originally from the wilds, and the rest were all born here. We have 3 generations. We have a family of Gracie's family, who we have 2 daughters, a grandson, and a granddaughter. So we have 3 generations in that family and 2 generations in most others. How do we tell the dolphins apart? Well, to me, oh, I have to do this too. Sorry, Kathleen.
That's okay.
There's Zach. Can you see Zach? Hey, Zach. Yep. Zach, say hi to Kathleen.
Hey, hi, Kathleen.
Hey, Zach.
Okay, that's Zachary, one of our senior trainers here at the facility, and he's doing what we call a facility pen check. He's making sure that all the structures are safe for the dolphins to live in. So that was Zachary. How do we tell the dolphins apart? Well, to me, they don't look anything alike. And I think that anyone that spends as much time with them as I do, or as Kathleen does studying them, you can see very quickly, within weeks, I would say, of being able to tell them apart. So for me, they all come in different colors or varying shades of gray. Some are kind of a brownish gray. Some are more of a steely blue gray. And some even have a tendency to look a little pink and purple at different times during the year. What maybe based on water temperature and circulation and things like that. So they all kind of come in different colors. And then some of the dolphins have very round features, like a round melon and like a round rostrum, sort of like a pug nose like me instead of a straight one. Some of the other dolphins have very pointy features. They have very pointy dorsal fins and pointy pec fins. So to me, they all look different. They have, their eyes can be kind of almond shaped and other ones are really, really round. And also the size of their blowholes are very, very different. We had one family that belonged to Mrs. Beasley, and we call them the large blowhole family because every one of her calves has a gigantic blowhole. And Mika's family of Polly and Mickey and Mac, they're the tiny blowhole family because they have very tiny blowholes. So
I hadn't thought of it that way.
Well, like when you look at them every day like we do, you notice those little features about what's going on. Even to the fact of Gracie's family has a tendency to have a little bit of an underbite on the bottom part of their rostrums that other animals don't have. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to tell them apart. Initially, people start telling them apart by maybe a scar or a little rake mark. These guys roughhouse with one another, and when they do, they use their mouths and they bite each other. It's not serious, although it sometimes can be serious. More often than not, 90% of the time it isn't. But they kind of roughhouse with each other like how puppies play, and they'll leave little scratches and marks on them. So when people first meet the dolphins, they kind of look for some sort of mark like that. However, those marks heal very quickly. So you really got to get to know what your animal in particular looks like for you to be able to tell them apart on a regular basis. So they're roughhousing right over there. They're roughhousing right over there on the beach. See that tail slapping over there? I don't know if it's too far away, but they're chasing.
We can sort of see some white water.
Yeah. Well, that's what dolphins do when they have their own free play time. They roughhouse with one another and slap around and catch fish and do all kinds of crazy partying stuff. So, okay, next question. I answered this already. How many generations do we have? We have at least one family with 3 generations in it. And actually, that's Gracie's granddaughter, youngest right now, is our youngest calf. And she is 7 months old, and her name is Sandy. And she just started learning how to train. She's still kind of wobbly. Like if you think about when a baby's taking its first steps, that's how I can describe Sandy to you right now. When she goes to sit up, she oftentimes falls down because she doesn't know how to sit up properly, and she doesn't have her balance yet. She's getting there and getting there really quick. She's starting to talk back to me. I'm a very verbal trainer. I talk to our dolphins a lot. Yes. And so let's see if I can show you Sandy right now. There she is.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's Sandy. And she's actually with Polly right now. And Polly is taking a very, very big interest. She's coming back around. I'm going to show you again. This is Dory. There's Sandy. And that's
She's getting
Polly.
big.
She's getting really big. And yep, there she is again. So this is really interesting. Polly is not Sandy's mother. Tilly is, and Tilly's nowhere around. So Polly's babysitting right now with Dory, which I don't know if that's such a good idea, but we all know Dory. But no, Polly is practicing. She's basically babysitting because she hasn't had a calf yet. And she's about 9 years old, so probably in the next year or so, Polly will get pregnant. So this is really good practice for her to swim around with her friend's baby. And then Tilly also gets a break. So that's nice. All moms need breaks. So we can relate to that. Okay. Next question. What do the dolphins eat? And do the dolphins drink water? That's a great question. Dolphins here eat a variety of herring and capelin and something we call finger mullet. The finger mullet and the capelin are a very lean fish. It has a lot of water and protein in it. And the herring is
Well, I'm going to pull my screens up so you guys can see this as well. And I'm going to stop my video so that you can see the screens. So as we go through, just as a quick reminder, this is an aerial view when I flew down there at one point and had some really great visibility. And this big dark area is Roatan. And this arrow points right here to Bailey's Key. And that's where Teri is right now. And this is Anthony's Key right here. So we'll go here. This video shows you, is the volume too loud, Cal?
I don't hear anything, so no.
Okay, well, I'm not going to worry about that since I thought I had assigned the audio, but I can talk about this and narrate it. So what you're seeing right here, this whole area is where the dolphins are at the Roatan Institute for Marine Sciences, or RIMS as we call it. And you're seeing a channel right up here. And then this is, the other area was Anthony's Key. And this is in the boat, Teri right here with Eldon. And so you can see that they go out into the shallow area and the dolphins follow the boat and they do some dives. They've been able to do some really neat research with that, as well as just having the dolphins go out on the reef and hang out either with divers or just some playtime as they do that. So this view is going to give you a full perspective of Bailey's Key and where the dolphins live. And you can see some of the dolphins swimming right along in here, and some of the trainers as well. They do in-water programs with the dolphins right there. So you can see some of the dolphins swimming back and forth between the trainers, and you see folks on the platforms. So John did that little video for us, which we were very happy about. So to give you an idea, Teri said she was going to be hanging out with Tilly and Sandy and also Polly. And so she was actually on this platform right here with a little bit of shade. And the dolphins were all around in this enclosure right here. So you can see a couple of them right here. This picture is from about 400 feet in the air. So to give you another slightly different perspective, this is Bailey's Key. It's an older photograph, so you don't have the shaded docks right there. This is Anthony's Key, which is part of the resort for where the divers stay. And then all the boats along this area right here, where you can see the boats and the dock, and that's the dive resort. And that's where the divers will go to get on their boats to go out and dive the reef. And Anthony's Key Resort was actually founded in 1968. So it had its 50th birthday a couple of years ago. And they founded, as Teri said, the Roatan Institute for Marine Sciences in 1989. And they have, Anthony's Key has a couple of classrooms and they focus on the dolphins, but also there's an education director who looks at the coral reefs, the various different corals as well as fish. And they were also part of several resorts that helped found the Roatan Marine Park. And so all of the reefs around Roatan are protected. So as Teri said, there are 17 bottlenose dolphins at the RIMS, or in the area there at Bailey's Key that call it home. And you have 10 female dolphins and 7 male dolphins. And here you see all of their names. But then on the next slide, I wanted to show you a little bit of the relationship that these animals had as Teri was talking about them. And so Gracie has 3 generations. You have Gracie, who's the mom, and 2, Maury and Tilly. Tilly has Sandy, who you got to see in the video and when Teri was there. And also Maury has Champ. So Gracie has 2 daughters and 2 grandchildren in the group. Alita has her son Lenka and her daughter Dory, who you also saw in that area. Bailey and Callie are sisters, and Bailey is Tank's mom. Ellie and Stan are brother and sister. And you have then Richie, Ronnie, and French, who are the older males, and Polly, who is a young adult female who hangs out with the other females in the group as well. So what I wanted to do now is share a couple of pictures with you that show you how I recognize and identify the dolphins at RIMS. And Teri and the other training staff actually recognize the dolphins based on their face. So they'll look at the dolphins based on the melon, which is the forehead right here. And it's hard to see, but maybe you can see the indent right here, which is where Alita's blowhole would be. And then you can see that they will look at these animals face on when the dolphins are looking at the trainers. And so they'll look at their faces, at their eyes, at the lines on their melons. And for me, it's really hard for me to recognize dolphins by their faces, because when I'm underwater observing these dolphins, I look at their whole body. So I look at the scars and the notches in their dorsal fin, the fin on the back, as well as in their flippers or their pectoral fins. And you can see that Dory's pectoral fin right here doesn't seem to have any marks on it, but Alita has a small white sort of blur right here on her right pectoral fin. So I think this is probably similar to you, Cal, in that we use the whole body to recognize and identify different individual dolphins. And we try to use a couple of marks in different spots on their bodies. And both the left and side, knowing the left and right side is important when we're trying to recognize and identify these dolphins. So I wanted to introduce you to Tilly on the right, who is Sandy's mom, and Callie. And you can see that Callie also has a little bit of a funky jaw in that the sides of her mouth, as I'm pointing out right here, don't completely close. And so you can actually see some of her teeth. But this is also foreshadowing, because what Callie and Tilly are doing right here is sharing a pectoral fin contact. And later in May, we're going to chat about how dolphins use their flippers or their pectoral fins to share information with each other. So, but I just had to share that because I liked this photograph because it shows the behavior as well as these 2 young female dolphins. Then you have some younger male dolphins. And for Stan, we actually, he has this dark mark right here on sort of, I guess you could say sort of just behind his forehead. He also has a couple of marks by his eye, his left eye right here. Lenka has this, in this particular photograph, he has this mark right here on his back. And then you have Champ, who has some marks right here on his face. And you can see that the lines, these dark color lines that each of the dolphins have, are unique and different to each one of them. So that's how, one of the ways that the trainers will tell the difference between each of these dolphins. And I don't always have face shots, but this is the closest I got in one of these photos to show you that these are the dolphins and in their faces. And if you look at the bottom of the photo, you can see that sometimes they pay a lot of attention to my fins, which I really would like them not to, but they can be very playful, at least here at RIMS. And then this is Mr. French, and his mom was Mrs. Beasley, as Teri was telling you about, and he's one of the older males. You can see his face is a little bit different. He's got a little bit of scuffing right here on his rostrum, or the end of his mouth. And sometimes dolphins, when they're older, have more white on their rostrum because they may be digging into the sand to go after little fish or rubbing against something in the environment. You can see there's coral behind him and other fish in the background. And so we see that with some of the dolphins as well. And as they get older, they sort of rub some of their rostrums a little bit, and you can see more white on them between the different individuals. And then here's a different view so you can see how we would recognize this particular individual. And his name is Ronnie. And his buddy Lenka, who is Alita's older son, is in the background right here looking down. But what's neat is these two photos of Ronnie are from slightly different angles, but you can see his birthmark really clearly. So the difference between the bottlenose dolphins and the spotted dolphins that you've heard us talk about at several of our webinars is that bottlenose dolphins don't really get spots until they're older, and they'll only get spots, and this is not all of them, but the ones that do will get some spots on their bellies. But occasionally they'll have birthmarks, which are like these sort of big splotches. And this is one way that we can tell Ronnie apart really easily, is because he has that birthmark, and you can see where it is right here. And he's had that, he was born with it. So this was Ronnie in March 2020 when I was last visiting Roatan. And then I wanted to share you, since you did meet Tank in view and Bailey briefly, I wanted to introduce you with a brief video to Bailey and Tank, and to Callie, who is Tank's aunt and Bailey's sister. And so what I'm showing you here is when Tank was 3.5 months old. You can see him right there below his mom. He's a little older now because he was born in October 2017. And he's swimming right now with Callie. And here's Tank when he's a little bit older, about 15 months, almost 1.5 years. He's a little bit bigger. He's a little bit more solid in his swimming. But again, he's hanging out with Bailey and with Callie. So those are the slides that I wanted to share with you about Roatan. Cal, I'm not sure if there are any other questions, or if I should, do you have any questions from anybody?
We do. We have a question about a sort of when they have their calves. Is
Okay.
there a birth season for dolphins, or are they born throughout the year?
That's a very good question. And there is, depending on which group of animals you're looking at, whether it's animals in managed care or animals in the wild, there does seem to be a season. And I believe, Cal, correct me if I'm wrong, we see a peak in the spring in Bimini for when we might have new calves, but then you might have a couple of calves that are sort of off season that might be born later in the season. And that's about the same with the dolphins at RIMS. They seem to have more of their calves actually in the late summer or fall, as opposed to the early spring. At least that's how it seems to have been working. At least when we're seeing them and observing them, that's when we see them. How about?
Thank you. Yes, I would say in the wild here at our Bimini, Bahamas field site, where we study Atlantic spotted and bottlenose dolphins, we're mostly looking for the dolphins in the summer when those seas are calm. And one of the ways that we infer that they're having calves all year round is that in the summertime, we see itty bitty bitty teeny calves. We
Okay.
see calves that look like they're probably 3 months old, 6 months old, 9 months old, and we see pregnant females. So we're able to take those observations, even though we can only get the info in the summer, we can take in lots of other information.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome.
We have 2 more questions. One, could you remind us, I think we said it, but I don't remember, how old is Tank now, who just went on his little adventure?
Okay, Tank now is about 2.5 years old, if I can do my math correctly, because he was born in October 2017.
Nice.
So, and Sandy is I think about a year old, little bit more than a year old as well.
Excellent.
So they're growing fast. It's like a
Yes.
family album.
Can you tell us a little bit about dolphins hearing? Do they hear at all? And if they do, would they be hearing the fish around them?
Well, that's a very cool question. I've never been asked if they could hear the fish around them. But if you look, I think you have to tell me, can you still see the screen? Okay.
I can, yeah.
So if you see Tank's eye right here, I'm pointing at that. And then there's a little indent that's really hard to see, but my sort of hand cursor is right pointing to it. And that's where Tank's ear would be if he had external pinna or the outer ear like we have. But they don't have the outer ears like we have because they're streamlined for living in the ocean and moving in the ocean. And so they actually, it's pretty cool that they have the same middle and inner ear that we have. So they hear relatively the same way. And we use our ears to get directionality to sound. So if any of you out there, if you cup your ears and you're listening to something, it'll give you more directionality. And the way dolphins do that is they hear with their lower jaw. So their lower jaw is hollow, not like ours. Ours is solid. Theirs is hollow and it's filled with fat. And the lower jaw is thin at the beginning and flares out and becomes wide and flat back towards their eye and their ear. And that part of their jaw comes close to the ear. And so the sounds are received and travel up their jaw to their middle ear. And that's how they hear. And because you have the shape of the jaw that's like that, they have a permanent smile, which is cool. So dolphins aren't necessarily always happy, even though they're always smiling, but they have to have that smile so they can hear, which is pretty cool. And I think they probably can hear some fish noises, but maybe not all the fish noises.
Maybe the snapping shrimp, they're one of the noisiest things out there.
Yeah.
You wouldn't necessarily think so, right?
Yeah, they probably tune it out as white noise, I think. Yeah.
We are winding down, so I'm going to make this our last question. If anybody thinks of questions later, reach out to us on social media, shoot us an email, and be sure to tune into all of our future webinars. So the last question, thank you for sharing all of those family trees with us of the dolphins there. Are there conflicts between the different families there? And if there are, how did they resolve the issues?
Well, it's not, from my observations, I'd have to double check some of that with Teri, but based on some of what I've observed, it's not so much that there's conflict with family members, although, you know, I have two sisters, and when we were growing up, we could really get on each other's nerves. And so I'm sure that there's a little bit of that between some of the dolphins who are family members, but they also will have maybe roughhouse or disagreements, if you will, with other dolphins in the area. And it's the same type of sort of observation that you'd see with other social animals, which include humans. So, you know, you might get into a shouting match where you might sort of, you know, use loud vocalizations or yell at each other. And you might occasionally wrestle or, you know, sometimes punch someone, which is not recommended, but that can happen. And so we've seen dolphins where they can kick one another and they can ram one another with their rostrum and they can bite each other. And sometimes they do that in play, and sometimes they do that when they're fighting. And they don't seem to get to the point where, in this group anyway, where they do it to the point where they really, really seriously hurt each other. But some of those white marks on their bodies come from each other's teeth. And those are rake marks, and those are normal social activities. It's kind of like if you're playing with your dog or your cat, if you have one, and they scratch you. I don't think that they intended to go after you, but, you know, everybody gets a scrape now and then. So
excellent. Thank
cool.
you.
Thank you. Well, we have, just as a few reminders for coming forward, I have to, there we go. Nope. I figured we can remind you again, here's our education tab, and we do have all of our webinars up on the DCP website under our webinar page. And also later today, we'll be uploading this particular webinar to our YouTube channel as well as to our DCP website. So you can look for more scheduled programs there. And our next programs are, I believe, Cal, on Thursday at noon, we're going to be learning about spotted dolphin friendships.
And I'm really excited about this one. I'm totally biased towards DCP's Bimini field site, but I'm super excited about this Thursday. It'll be geared a little bit towards older students, but even younger kids understand friendships. So I think everybody will enjoy it.
Very true. And then next week, next Tuesday, we have another dolphin lesson. And I think maybe Justin might be joining us.
I think it is fantastical facts about dolphins.
Awesome.
And next week, we're going to take a break from giving away an electronic adoption kit, and we're going to give away a copy of 22 fantastical facts about dolphins.
And I can show it.
You don't want to miss that one.
Very cool. Very cool. So I think if you would like to wrap up this portion of it, Cal, and if anybody has any other questions, because we're not going to take any more questions right now, please feel free to send them to us to the info@dcpmail.org email address, and we'll do our best to reply as soon as we can. So
yeah, and last chance to get those emails into the chat for today's drawing. But of course, we wouldn't be a good nonprofit if at the end we didn't say thank you and remind you that you can support our work. We'd like to keep these webinars free. This has been a challenging year for us, just like all other small businesses and nonprofits. So if you are interested in adopting a dolphin, becoming a member, purchasing a shirt or a bandana, for every $15 spent on our website, those asterisk things, you can choose someone to receive a free electronic Adopt a Wild Dolphin kit. So that means if you want to choose a nurse, another essential worker, grocery store worker, delivery person, or just somebody who's having a hard time, we'd like to kind of pay it forward and say thank you and cheer people up while also keeping our own programs going. So that's what's happening right now. And we thank you all for joining us.
And thank you.